Minister, the Maritime Area Planning Bill 2021 seeks to provide the legislative framework for a new streamlined development consent process for activities in the maritime area, including offshore renewable energy. The bill also provides for the establishment of a new agency, the Maritime Area Regulatory Authority, to undertake certain consenting and enforcement functions in the new regime. Types of projects or activities which would fall under the new MAC system under the Marine Planning and Development Management Bill include offshore renewable energy and gas storage, telecommunications cables, ports, harbours, marine environment surveys and pollution, while also helping to address the threat of climate disruption. Importantly, it is critical that coastal communities and the fisheries sector are fully protected within the new process, while also ensuring tourism potential is not impacted. Much of the conversation around this plan emanating from government has revolved around the potential to scale up offshore wind energy in line with increased targets, aligned with a halving of Irish carbon emissions by 2030. However, there has been little or no meaningful public consultation, Minister, with local communities around these plans. It appears that much of the focus on maritime planning is focused on developing wind energy, while on the other hand targeting the effective wipeout of the entire fishing sector. Where is the sustainability in this approach? And while I agree with wind energy at sea, this is in no way should be allowed to impede on the fishing sector, a sector, Minister, which was abandoned by successive governments before and during Brexit, and has since been abandoned by the Fine Gael, Fianna Fáil and Green government, who happily sat idly by as 43 million was wiped off fishermen's incomes in this country without a blink of an eyelid, on the hope that this government, has now that it can stagger along until the decommissioning of Irish fishing fleet comes along. In other words, get rid of them, as Ireland and Europe together, hand in hand, wiped out the Irish fishing industry in this country. The Maritime Bill will demonstrate how fishermen and rural coastlines and islands will benefit from it. It must demonstrate that. Areas of Irish water will be set aside for construction. So if this is the case, jobs will be created in all sectors of this proposal, at sea, long and short term. Can we guarantee that all now out-of-work fishermen can get some of these jobs? Areas like this must be looked at so we can bring our hard-pressed fishermen totally on board. Have discussions taken place with fishing groups throughout the country? And what has been the outcome? As they are masters of the sea and they are the voice that has to be listened to. This has to be honest discussions, Minister, not like the Minister for Agriculture, McConnell Logue's visit to West Cork recently, when he mistakenly released a press release of the successful visit he had with fishermen in West Cork, but released it the day before he arrived in West Cork, which meant this political stunt backfired and showed what little regard he had for the fishing groups and fishermen of West Cork. So there is an area of mistrust, mistrust in rural communities, in islands, in coastal communities, and that mistrust has to be looked into in a more deeper way, Minister, to make sure that if you want to bring this across the line, which is of huge importance, and I agree, that you do that with their consent and working with them. And when you do visit constituencies like West Cork, that you might contact all the elected representatives there, so that we could work with you and not look at some, some party member or somebody in the political spectrum, because we actually, it'll come back to us. The TDs in these areas, and if we've been overlooked, we're not part of the process, so we'll make our own minds up then from there in. So if this bill is to be managed properly, we have to have honest, straight up, show the benefits and the pitfalls, and how do we soften the pitfalls and benefit areas, rural communities. A loss of fishing grounds has to be avoided at all costs. Only recently I met with the successful fish farm groups in Castletownbere. I put to them the upset of inshore fishermen have when large fish farms are given licences taking up large amounts of sea ground. That's a huge concern. So we are facing something similar in a different light out into the bigger seas, and that concern is there. And in fairness, these guys that have fish farms, like some of them are very genuine, they're localising, they're providing local employment, but there is a concern there, and there is an alternative. There's a land-based alternative in some countries, and that needs to be looked at more here, so they can do land and sea alternatives. But the other side of that is I was listening to the fish farmers, and I have to I fully agree with them. The biggest blockages that they have in this country, and I hope you don't come up against the same pitfalls, is the licences being applied, we'll say, for a fish farm. Now, I'm not saying whether the fish farm should get that licence or shouldn't get that licence, but it takes 10 years before they're notified. So you imagine you apply for something, planning permission for a house or planning for anything, and you have to wait 10 years for a response whether you do or don't, because I mean, it's an astonishing situation, to be honest with you, and I know it's not under your department, but it is under the Department of Agriculture and Marine, and they have to be answerable to these applicants, let they be genuine or not. Is their application genuine or not? And that's another area that maybe the Maritime Bill should be looking at, because we should be looking at all issues of the sea. And what I'm trying to say is that we spent there's engagement here and discussion here. I wish that discussion was going on when before Brexit last year. No matter how I mentioned it into the Dáil, the Taoiseach was away at the ferries. He was away at the ferries. He didn't understand what I was talking about, and it was obvious the Minister for Agriculture didn't understand it, and they led blindly into an agreement done out in Europe that decimated Irish fishermen and ruined a lot of incomes and a lot of people's livelihoods. And no answer, bar, as I said, dragging themselves into decommissioning, hoping that that'll get things across the line, get rid of them, move on. I also note that our harbours will be involved in this Maritime Area Planning Bill, and harbours and piers need to be looked at seriously. There are so many of these in West Cork that need upgrading, and probably throughout the country, and in shocking state of disrepair. I can name so many. One of our piers is at the pier of Union Hall. The Minister for Ag and Marine was down recently to do the Fianna Fáil roadshow. For all the good it was to the fishermen of West Cork, as the pier users in Union Hall got no announcement as to when that pier will be expanded or works to be done on it. Floating terminals were something that was mentioned here, Minister, and I can't understand for the life of me why it can't be considered more in a serious light. And I'm certainly 100% I'm no expert in floating terminals, but I did put a very genuine proposal forward to Minister Eamon Ryan last year, a genuine proposal and openness for dialogue. And I mean, in fairness, he did ring the individual in question, somebody in West Cork that had huge experiences across the world and wanted to invest some money in Ireland. We have a situation where we have faced how many amber alerts already in the past 12 months? We're on the verge of a blackout in Ireland, and if you don't mind me saying, a bit like the Brexit negotiations, you're asleep at the wheel. And we have to look at other ways, because this plan is down the road. I know you're trying to speed it up. I can respect some parts of that, but it's still not going to be a solution to the situation we're at right now. The floating terminal was a solution, was a great solution by a West Cork company that was willing to invest, willing to do this off the Cork Harbour, and I don't know for the life of me. Please tell me where I'm going wrong, or please tell me where this guy is going wrong, because it's happening all over Europe, and it seemed to be a green solution, it seemed to be a great solution, but not Ireland. It can't happen off of Cork because we're Irish, is it? So I went into great detail with the Minister. I used it in leaders' questions at some stage. It's been 3 minutes with our leaders to try and get that point across, because I had taken advice and listened to it, and obviously that's where we almost. And while we do need to discuss the Maritime Area Planning Bill, as I said, I wish there was other areas in maritime that the government gave so much time to. I am supportive of much of the Maritime Area Planning Bill, but if rural communities, if islands, if inshore fishermen, if our pelagic fishermen are not properly consulted, I will be led by their call, Minister, as they are the only people I am answerable to inside this Dáil. To the people of Castledownbere, Kilcrehan, Mizenhead, all the way out along the coastline to Kinsale, by Union Hall, Glandore, whatever. They're the people that put me here, and they're the people I elect. And if you're down in West Cork, and if, as I said earlier, if you decide that it's only a certain sector you want to speak to, I want everybody spoken to. I want everybody on board. I want to make sure that everybody's livelihoods are protected here. The livelihoods that were lost by complete and utter neglect. This is an opportunity to turn this around. There may be advantages here. There obviously will be snags and disadvantages, and we'll have to iron them out. I'll be supportive of this if they're ironed out, and if there's complete consultation. I'll be meeting with fishing groups over the weekend. I will be discussing this with them. I'll be meeting farming group. I just texted a meeting there with the IFA over the weekend as well. And I want to talk to them, because they represent rural communities, and I want their vision and their view on this, Minister. And look, in fairness, we're inside here talking about it, and that's a positive note and something that I welcome. But you know, hopefully we'll keep along that line of discussion and go from there. Thank you, Minister.